Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Lair, episode number 7. To remind everyone that probably didn't see the last episode that was made available, I think it was yesterday actually. I'm not in the same location, as you can see by the background. I'm in Lisbon. Maybe this is a surprise for some of you that are watching at the moment. For some others, probably it's not a surprise, but we flew to Lisbon last week, to more than a week now, actually, to give some rest of this pandemic thing about in the way that it's happening in the UK at the moment. As you all know, it's not the most pleasant situation over there, well, anywhere. But as I said last week, things here in Portugal, they are quite different. I don't want to repeat myself because I already told this last week, but without a doubt that things, they are very, very different in here. So everybody wears masks. They are obliged to if they want to go into any shop. Not all the shops are open, but the great majority of them are. So it's a very different kind of situation. I think here also on the public transports, people are required to wear masks, which I think it makes total sense. And from my understanding, it's only by next week that that's gonna happen in the UK. Anyway, I don't really get it, to be honest with you, but this is what's happening. So in Lisbon, the weather today is not amazing. It reminds me a bit of London. I think this was on purpose, so I don't miss London that much. But apart from today, it's been really good. I'm in a different house, as you can see, of course, and so there will be a little bit of echo and all that stuff. Not the most pleasant sound, but I don't think it's that bad either. Once again, thank you for all the messages. People they seem like they are really enjoying this. Thank you for all the messages, subscriptions, suggestions. I remind you that we have a Discord channel as well. There will be some things that I will only announce there. It's a more direct type of contact. Otherwise, it will be a bit too laborious for me to advertise in every single channel. Sometimes just a question or a suggestion or something like that. So please go there and join us on the Discord channel. Speaking of which, there will be a bot in the chat, I believe. Let's see if I can if I can watch it. I can't watch it, but probably you are watching it. Let me check. Probably watching it, and you can interact with it. So if you put more, not question mark, sorry, exclamation mark point more, you'll be able to interact with it, and there will be several commands, and one of those is how to join on the Discord channel. So there will be, that thing flying around at some point with some random messages as well. This week, we also had one thing that I was not expecting, which is our very first fan art. Yes. So for those of you that are not aware of this, we had the massive, I had the massive problem last week, technically speaking. So I wasn't able to do the live session in the same way. So we had to postpone the second half of it, and that's why it was made available. Everything edited, of course, you won't notice, even though I mentioned this on the episode. But we had to basically break it in half, and so I was about to say panicking, not the correct term, but I was worried because probably I wouldn't be able to do it. But this was something from well, due to the fact that my machine in which I was running this is really, really old. And so the message was, because everything shut down, basically that's what happened. And the message was on the report, the technical report from Apple, was GPU panic attack. So that's good, and that's why I'm gonna try to put the fan art. Look at this. So this was sent by Sabine, and I thought, well, we're not sharing it. That's exactly what happened. My face was maybe even worse than this one here, but that's what happened. So if you have fan art, please send it, and I'll make it happen here on the channel. But I thought it was funny to just show you this. What else can I share this week before we go to the tech corner? Pandemic updates. I already told you more or less what are the differences in here in Lisbon. So in terms of what's happening in the UK, to my knowledge, because I've been obviously watching the news and all that stuff, so to my knowledge, the masks are going to be only mandatory, I think, from next week, from Monday. I don't get the weight, but that's apparently what's happening. And in terms of things that are happening in our industry, unfortunately, things are not changing for the best. They're changing for the worse, because the furlough scheme changed. So from August, companies will be requested to contribute with something. So the furlough scheme, even though it's going to be happening until the end of October, if I'm not mistaken, at the same time, companies will be required to contribute with something in phases from the 1st of August. And of course, for those companies that their financial situation didn't change, or the prospects of new businesses didn't change, of course they will let go a lot of people. And as I said last week or a couple of weeks ago, to some analysts, this is where the real struggle begins, and it's easy to understand why. So unfortunately, in our industry, this is already happening. We've all seen the news about what I'm talking about this week. So it is what it is, I guess. But once again, I think this is time for us to take this moment to develop things that otherwise we wouldn't do it, because several excuses, and real ones, don't get me wrong, but we all have our lives, and after days of work, at the end of the day, we don't have the stamina most of the times to still develop all of those personal projects, because we're tired or because we have kids, and then all the routine at the end of the day starts and makes us impossible to do this. So this is definitely, in my mind, this is definitely the time. Again, part of the reason why this was born was because of this, even though it was always in my mind, but I didn't have the as I said, the stamina or even the courage. Why not? Maybe that was also what was happening, to basically come up with this idea and put it live as we have it today. So there's other things that I'm developing. We'll see when I be able to reveal. But this is definitely the time, and this, I think, is the right time to do them. So don't lose that. Please keep doing that, because this will be over at some point. And if you can take some time off to do those things, please don't lose that from your side, because this is, I think, the time. What else? Technical, of course. Technical highlight of the week. I started this maybe 3 weeks ago, and I'm trying always to come up with a new thing every week. Might not happen every week, but I'll try. So the technical highlight this week that I selected is an article about machine learning from Tiago Porto, a Brazilian guy that might be a guest soon in this channel. and it's basically an article on machine learning can be, and all data science, I would say, can be applied in what we do. And I think it's going to be a game changer for a bunch of industries, and ours as well. Some people overall, not necessarily in our industry, fear that this is gonna substitute some of the work that normally humans do. But I don't think that's the case in terms of, yes, it will happen like that, but at the same time that happens, a lot of other things going to be available for people to work on, because it's the industry changes, and so I think it's always a good thing. So the article is on FX Guide, and I'll be putting the link afterwards in the comments, so everybody can check, and I'll put it on the Discord channel as well. So let's see what messages do we have here. Let me check, because there's a lot of activity here. What's that? Priceless. How are you, buddy? Oh, cool. Good to know that you're interacting with each other. Pedro, this guy should be a guest as well. Who are you talking about, Igor? Maybe. Actually, that's a good point, because part of the reason why, or the premise of this project is to bring people, real people with real problems, with real conversations, and break that politically correct format that we so often see. So if any of you would like to participate live with me, that was always the premise of this show, even though I come up always with the guests, and that will be the case today. And I can already advance that for the next maybe month or month and a half, I already have guests planned. But if any of you would like to be here with me live with other people, please send me a message, and we'll make it happen. This is for you. I'm doing this for everybody, including myself as well, for my mental health as well. But yeah, please hit me with the message. I already mentioned that one of our viewers is up for it. We'll see when we can make it happen. But definitely it's an option. So just send me a message, and we'll try to make it happen. What else? I think that's all for now. Let's jump into the tech corner. I hope you enjoyed this one, and then we're gonna talk a little bit after, and we're gonna have our guest as usual. All right, so let's go to the tech corner. See you in a second. Part of the good practices of any compositor should be that they come up with systems within their scripts, because if things change, everything within the script will be automatically readjusted. So that's the way that we should always work. So what we're going to do in this example is exactly that. So I have this aerial view of a forest, and I've tracked these plates with a simple camera track, and I end up with this camera. Then I've used a depth generator, so I can generate depth. This is a native node, not very commonly used, but it's here. So you just click Analyze Sequence, and that should give you the depth. So if we look at the depth, this is what we have as the output. But the way that this is working is we have the stronger values at the front and the not so strong values at the back. So we have to invert this, because that's the way that we're gonna do the following case study. We're gonna say 1/Z on the depth channel, and that will change the aspect of that same depth channel. And this is exactly what I have in here, but we need to remap that depth channel, because this depth channel, as all depth channels, is the depth of the world in which the seed is sitting. But what we want in this case, we want to remap those values, so we end up with more or less this line. There's no much change in terms of black levels. From this point more or less onwards, we're gonna have some change in black levels, some hazing, and that's what we are trying to come up with. It's a system that will automatically take care of the black levels depending on where the subject is in the scene. So to do that, we drop a grade node, and now we're going to say our black point, it's at the front somewhere in here, and then we're going to say the white point should be the furthest away, so we're going to say somewhere in here. So let's look at what we have. So again, we're saying we don't have much change up until here, and then from here till the end, that's where we see some change progressively, more and more, of course. So that's what we have. So the values don't go above 1, even though for this purpose, what we're seeing here is just for reference. So it doesn't really matter because we're not going to use this within the actual main pipe. Okay, so now we can further adjust. Now we have this dragon here that we will want to integrate in the scene as much as we can. Black levels first, and then we'll see what we can do extra. But black levels will be something desirable to have. If we put an element on a card, as we're going to have to do it here, because this is a flat image, of course we don't have any AOV, so we don't have depth. So we're going to put this on the card, and we're going to put the card wherever we want, taking this point cloud as reference, as visual reference. So let's put this at the very front of our scene. So in the beginning of the forest, somewhere in here. And then I'm using the same camera. Let's see what we have. So this is what we have. Let's say that the dragon is more or less where these trees are. So we have to take care first, what's the base level of our black levels? What's the blackest that this dragon should be? So I just changed the black levels here. This is the base level. From this point further away, the black levels should follow whatever values we have in the scene. How do we do this automatically? It's basically extract the depth channel, and of course the scanline render gives us that for free. So we're gonna basically steal all the manipulation that we did in here, because we manipulated this depth, saying that okay, it's more or less from this point until the end that we start to see some change. So we're gonna do that, and we're gonna steal what we did in here for the scene and apply that on the dragon. Okay, so now our depth channel will have the same type of manipulation. So now what we're gonna do is we need to color that dragon in such a way that the further he goes, the highest the black levels will be, and not only the highest, but with a certain value automatically as well. So if we have it like this, this will be exactly the same, but then this will take over. Okay, so we're gonna say what's the furthest black level we want, and we want, say, if the dragon seated in here, we want that to be our black level, the maximum black level. Say for example this guy here. If we have this as a normal grade, not being masked by any channel, we would have this. Now of course this is only valid if the dragon is like further down around this region, otherwise this doesn't make any sense. So instead we're gonna put the mask to depth, because I've put the depth from here. So we have our depth in here, and now if I put a new view here, you'll be able to see within the point cloud where we are. Okay, we are right at the front, so we don't have any change in terms of black levels, but the further away you go, the black levels will start to change automatically. Okay, so this will go to, if you go to the end of the scene, you'll see this changing even more. Of course, you should change, for example, this is probably a little bit too dark still, so you would have to remap this guy here, so it will be affected more already around this region here. But an important thing is not only the black levels, but also the color of the atmospherics that we want to inherit from the background. And maybe this is okay, the black levels. I think it's still a bit too dark, but one thing that we're definitely missing is the tone of the background. So in order to do that, what we can do, we're gonna try to come up with an average color of the background, and we can do this easily by having this blur to 100 or something like that. You adjust this to taste, and then we want these colors to be injected. The key mix, it's an option, there's other options. We want to inject this within the depth channel. So in this case I'm shuffling the depth channel out. In here I'm using it inside, no special reason, but it's just for it to be a bit more clear in terms of how to do things in different ways, of course. So we have the key mix here, and now we're gonna, if we look at the pre-mode, you see this is taking this color, and we're gonna put that on the dragon. Then we'll adjust the taste. If we put this fully, we don't see the dragon, because the dragon is being confused by the actual background. See, barely see it. So you put the touch of this, something like that, and this will also change the black levels a bit. Okay, so this means that we have our dragon here.
And if we go down, it will become a bit greener. If we go up, it will become a bit more the color of the sky. And also the black levels will be readjusted depending where you are in the scene. You can compile this into a tool, as I did this in here a long time ago. So this will take the background. In here you can apply either a constant or an average color of the background, and then you assign your depth channel. You readjust or remap where the depth is, and this will give you this for free. So this is a good way to do this type of work. If we need to normalize the depth channel for some reason, we have two methods basically, which is we go to the depth channel. We know that it's going way above 1. And so normalization means gonna keep the same relationship, but we're gonna take the whole thing down up until 1 and not below 0. It's not the same thing as just clamping it. First clamping it, we'll put this to 1 on the channels that we are clamping. Now we have 1, but this is not a true normalization. This is just clipping the values to 1 where they go above 1. So the basic formula for any normalization is this. So it's the set of values. We can have a set of values, a certain value minus the minimum of that set, and that whole thing goes over the maximum value minus the minimum value. So what we have to do is to drop a expression after this guy and try to come up with the minimum and maximum. The way to do it is with a curve tool, and we're going to say, instead of averaging the values of every couple of frames, we're going to say this to every frame. Okay, so every frame we're going to analyze it, the true value, and then we're going to say max luma pixel. I'm just going to do this for 2 frames, and then here we're going to have the maximum value. We can go to the curve here, max luma pix value, and we know that this is the maximum, okay, of the frame range that I selected and analyzed it. So this is the value, and now what we can do is we can drop an expression, and we're going to apply this formula. So we're going to apply this on the depth, and we say the x in this case is going to be the depth. It's the collection of values, the set of values that we have, and then we're going to minus this, minus the minimum, and the minimum will be 0 on our set of values here that we analyzed. And then we're going to put this over the maximum, which is this value here, and we need to minus that by 0. So this is now normalized. We are keeping the relationship of the pixels, but we're taking the whole thing down as much as we can, of course, so we can have a maximum of 1 and a minimum of 0. All right, so this is now the normalized depth. So this is the true normalization. And then, of course, if we want to remap again for some reason, we can do the same trick as before. Go here, set say the one that is the closest to camera to that black point, that value, and somewhere around here, I would say that is the brightest point, which is 1. It's going to be our white point. Okay, so now this is the difference. All right, this is how you do a normalization of any set of values. Let's take a look at a different example now, which is we have this element, which is a smoke element, and we have our dragon, and we want to put one over the other. We want to put our smoke on top of our dragon, but we want the dragon to be more or less apparent depending on how deep he is in the scene, and we're going to do that automatically. So first thing to do is obviously create an alpha channel from this image that we don't have because it's just a plain image. So we're going to drop an expression, and normally what I do is I sum all the channels, RGB, and then I put a clamp. Another way to do this would be to use a keyer based on the luminance, and then you'll get your channel as well. There you go. Now we have it. And now if you put one over the other, of course, if we want the depth channel, we have to do something with this guy because this will not give us anything that we want. So the way to do it is you put a card straight, and then you open the camera, and this time this camera is not going to be based on anything real. And of course, we're going to have the scanline render. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a dependency between the camera and the card. The way we do it is we steal the focal length from the camera, whatever that might be, to the lens in focal knob within the card. So we have that, and then we do the same for the horizontal aperture. So this means that they now have a relationship between them, and this makes the card to be always in the frustum of the camera if we don't tweak any other values here. But because they are sitting both at the 0, 0, 0 values within the world, we can't see anything. So we need to have even the slightest value on the card that's going to be in front of camera so we can see something. Let's put this, say, for example, here. As you can see, even if you go like really far away, it's going to be always within the frustum of the camera. This means also, and you saw the size changing, this also means that after the scan layer render, your 2D image is going to be exactly the same as your incoming image before the card. No matter how far you go, this won't change. What you see won't change. But because we're changing effectively the position in space, we are also changing the values of its depth channel. So if we shuffle the depth channel, and we know that the depth channel comes for free within the scan layer render, you're going to have the depth. And this depth, unlike the other example, we're not going to invert it or anything like that, because what we need is actually the more far away you will go, the less value you will have. So if we go really close to camera, it's going to be 1 or close to it, depending on your scene. And then the more far away you go, the less you'll get. So we have two options of integrating the actual dragon in our scene, dependent on where he is in space. So if we put our smoke and dragon mixed together like that, and we can do this because now we have an alpha channel, we're gonna have this thing that will not change at all if we do this type of thing, because we're not changing the RGB channel. It's gonna be exactly the same. But we can do something about it. We can punch a hole in here, well, depending on where the dragon is, and the depth channel will follow that, of course. So instead of putting this over for now, well, we can leave it over, but we should put another one, another merge, and this time we're going to choose a stencil operation. And we're going to plug this directly from the depth channel, and we're going to punch a hole in here. Okay, so now we will see a change depending on where we are. If we are really far away, the values are not very intense in the depth channel, so we're gonna punch less of a hole. And if you're gonna be really close to camera, we're gonna have this a bit more as the silhouette of the actual dragon. So this means that if we still use this guy on top of our dragon, now the appearance of this is gonna give us more or less smoke in front of him. So this is one of the approaches, but I think there's a better way, and the better way is to delete this guy, and instead we're gonna make a dependency between the depth and the actual dragon by multiplying one by the other. So if we're really close to camera, this guy will be fully multiplied, which means that it's gonna show us exactly what it is, and the more you go, the less apparent it will be. And its alpha channel will also change because you're multiplying the depth that is now on RGB. So there you go. I'm going to show you this in context. Here we have our card, and the more far away I go from camera, the more far away this will get in terms of appearance, to a point that will disappear actually. And let's say that you have already a depth channel and you have a dragon flying in reality within the 3D scene, you'll get the depth channel changing automatically, and you can still use the same kind of technique to have this type of effect automatically. Even if the position of the dragon changes, that's fine. The dependency will always work, and that's what you want to try to achieve always, which is create systems that are bulletproof to this kind of changes as much as possible. Sometimes it's not possible, but if it's possible, that's what we should do.
Hope you like this one. Again, if you would like me, I say this every week, I know, I'm going to repeat myself once again. Probably some of you didn't hear me saying this, but if you would like me to focus or to talk about more specific things, please hit me with a message on Discord or any other medium. As you know, all of these social media is passing on the top of the screen, so you can reach me in any of these mediums. If not, I will always come up with something. I will try. There will be maybe a change in in maybe a couple of weeks. But again, if you'd like me to focus on something else or something different or more specific, let me know, and we'll try to make it happen. So it's time now for our guest. Let's just see if everything's fine. Before that, actually, we're gonna do something different today. So today we're gonna have because some of you might know him. Okay, so today I'm gonna show you some pictures first beforehand, and maybe it will be good to know if you can guess what I'm talking about. Let's try to to see. So this is the first one. Okay, I am there, and our guest is there as well. Okay, so this is one of them. The other picture is this one. Okay, we're both there. Any tips? This was, by the way, on the BAFTAs maybe 3 years ago. No, not 3 years ago. A lot more, like 5. Any guess? Let's see what people are saying. I think some well, Doctor Who. It's one of the answers. Let's see who's on the other side. Let's see who's on the other side now. And we're gonna try, let me just see if everything's fine, because I don't want this to break again. Okay, let's see. I think everything's fine and ready. Some of you are trying still to guess. I have to say that some of you guessed it right. We'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, time for the guess. See you in 2 seconds. Yes, Salvador. Hello. Some of our viewers guessed that it was you.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was good times, right?
Yeah, it was fun. It was a nice party.
Yeah, it was a nice party. It was a long time ago. Everybody, people are saying hello, Salvador. I don't know if you're watching the chat or not, but people are saying. Some of them asked if it was Nico. A lot of people, well, the majority actually said it was you. So that was a good one. How are you, man?
I'm good. I'm good.
You're good.
Lockdown.
Lockdown. There you go. Exactly. I know. It's still the same thing as I left it before I came to Lisbon. So. Hopefully that will end at some point. But I was showing these pictures, and when I was prepping this, I was realizing that it's been a while that we've met each other. This was around 5 years ago, I believe,
yeah,
right?
Maybe yeah, 5-6 years ago, something like that.
Yeah. So just to put everyone up to speed of what we're talking about, we basically met in important times of our professional lives, I would say, because that was the time in which both of us became supervisors in different type of levels. Let's say that was my first time as a 2D supervisor, and I believe it was your first time as a VFX supervisor. Correct?
Yes, indeed, yeah.
So it was a nice and important, I would say important, well, definitely for me it was an important moment for my career, and I believe it was as well for you, right? Some challenges, of course. Do you want to expand on that?
It was interesting. It's just a few months before joining, so we were working together at Milk, but a few months before I was at Prime Focus. I was as a comp soup there. I had just bought a house, and then they bought DNEG and said they were closing the VFX division.
Yeah.
I had contacted Milk because a friend of mine had told me it was a nice company to work with, and they made me an offer to come as a VFX soup on Doctor Who. So it was quite an unexpected step. It was fun.
It was fun, right? Some challenges, though, right? All the time.
Yeah.
But I have to say that we can expand on this a little bit later. But I have really good memories of those times, I have to say. I think professionally speaking, not because I became a soup, that's not what I'm talking about, but in terms of technique and all that stuff, I think I developed a lot from the necessity point of view, because they wanted to do like these crazy effects all the time, no budget, the same old thing. Anyway, it was a good time.
And it's a challenging show because you get
really challenging
features every week. So basically every episode you have to build new assets.
Yeah.
So you end up having to deliver every month a completely new set of assets and shots.
Yeah.
So you have to be efficient.
Yeah. Definitely, definitely, and you're always on tip of your toes because of that. So I think it's interesting. It was interesting. We worked on different things as well. But before we get into that, you've had a long career, even though you're a young guy. But you've had a long career. You had your own company in another country, and then you decided to come to London. So it will be, I think, interesting to our viewers to know how was that journey, and if you could expand a little bit on that, that would be great.
Okay, so I'll make it short.
All right.
I'll try at least. I started studying fine arts. Then I went to a cinema school, a private one, so I had to work on the side to pay for it. And then I had an internship at a production company that produced commercials, feature films, documentaries. And I went there for my summer internship, and there I got real life experience of what a shoot was and how it worked, how a production company works. And then I found some free classes at the Cinémathèque in Paris with directors from the Nouvelle Vague who were studying movies and things like that. So I thought, hey, this is better than my school. I'm learning real things, and my teachers at the Cinémathèque are better. So I stayed there, and I worked at that company first in post-production, running the small post-production lab, mostly for commercials. And then I did a bit of everything in that production company, but it shut down 3 years later. But I had learned in the meantime editing with the Media Composer. So for a year then I worked as a freelance editor and post-producer, mostly for commercials. And with former colleagues from that company, we were trying to work together, and we directed a corporate movie. And then through some connections, I got an opportunity to buy a Media Composer system. And back in the days, it's something that used to cost like €1 million. And
wow.
It was a second-hand one that was sold for a third of the price. But still, that was a lot of money that we didn't have.
A lot of money.
We partnered with a production company, and they bought the Media Composer. And in exchange, what we did is basically we supported the machine. We made sure it was always working, and we helped them whenever they had any problem. And in exchange for that, we could basically set up a small office in the production company and do our movies and do some very basic visual effects using After Effects that we had learned by ourselves. And from there, a contract came, and we started a company doing visual effects, directing commercials, directing music videos. And it was quite fun. We had no idea what starting a company meant, but we were gathering all the tools to make animations and visual effects.
Okay.
Sadly, very quickly, the relationship with my partners went south, but I decided to keep the company, and I kept the company for 10 years, and I did a bit of everything there. We a bit of documentaries, went filming, we edited, we graded. It was a very small post-boutique, basically.
But you were doing it all.
In between jobs at the company, I always did some comp, mostly at Micros in Paris, so comp work on movies. But it was never my main activity. It was in between different jobs. But after something like 9 years, it was becoming a bit exhausting having to do everything, having to chase clients, find new clients, make sure I got paid, find freelance people to hire when I needed, do the movies and try doing the best movie I could with while still making a profit. And also back in the days, some clients started not paying, so it was a bit difficult to pay my artists while I was not being paid by my clients. And just at that time, a friend of mine who had just joined Prime Focus in London asked me if I wanted to join. And I said, yes, why not? For 3 months, who knows? And I came to Prime Focus. We were 10. It was a really, really nice, small company. I really liked it. So I decided to try a bit further, to stay a bit longer and try a bit more. And the company grew and grew, and we did Dread all together. It was really fun. I really liked it. And the company grew and grew, and I had fun at Prime Focus while it grew. But I had never been working solely on compositing since then. Before joining Prime Focus. And then after 3 years at Prime Focus, I had become ComSoup there, and they shut down. That's a condensed story. TV versus film, what's your preference and why? I like both. I like the fast pace of TV, how it's always different, and how you don't have the time to just pixel fuck every single shot, which is kind of the pain of film. But film, it's interesting because you then get to finesse shots a bit better. You also usually have a better budget, but it's not always the case. You have more time, so you can push things a bit further. In TV, it's easy to push a shot to 80%, and you have to reach that 80% level fairly quickly. But you're quite often frustrated that you have to stop working on a shot and you have to let it go. But you have to find a way to get the best result possible in the least amount of time. In film, you get more chances to explore. You get more time to do some R&D and explore how a shot approach, because film visual effects, I guess you think you're going to be able to do a shot or an asset or a sequence this way, and then it turns out that the path you chose is not quite right, or you might be more successful trying something different that you hadn't thought about before.
Yeah.
And that in TV can be very difficult to do. But nowadays, the thing is, TV and film, the boundaries are blurring. There's no such thing, and actually quite often when you work on film, you're working at a resolution than when you work on TV.
I would say though that working on TV, because it's a more fast-paced kind of project, I think your mind probably would develop a bit more in terms of techniques that you have to come up with, and because in film sometimes you end up like months and months on end just to get one shot out, because the clients, they never know exactly what they want. They're still trying to figure out what they like. There's a lot of try and error situation, and in TV, due to the scheduling, we don't have that luxury. So we have to come up always with multiple solutions to solve a shot. If this one doesn't go well with the clients or with what we're trying to do, we have to try something else, and we have to develop our minds. And I have to say that working on TV, especially when we were working with each other, because that's when I started working on TV, my mind developed a lot regarding technically speaking. Then the pace is also interesting because it's faster. So you don't end up like months, as I said, months and months on end, like trying to get a shot out, let alone a sequence. So for those of you that are watching this and have these questions, because a lot of people ask me these questions, and probably they asked you as well at some point. My take on it is try, and then you'll see what's best for you. Some people prefer commercials. It's not my thing. But some people prefer it as well, so why not? You have to try and then see what's the best thing for you. That would be my situation. The same thing happens working on set. Actually, we have a good nice story that maybe it's cool to to talk about it here. So basically, what happened? I had I think it was my first experience on set with Salvador. At that time, was it for Doctor Who or it was for something else?
No, it was for a series I'd rather not talk about.
Exactly. All right. I know what you're talking about. I remember now. Yeah. So we went on set, and we had all the equipment and all that stuff. That sometimes Salvador was carrying the equipment, sometimes I was carrying the equipment, depending on whether we were about to embark on the train or we were waiting for each other at some point or whatever. And then we were traveling to York, right?
Yeah.
And then I was so concerned about the equipment, and of course we were spending like a weekend or something, a couple of days or something there, right, or even more. So we had our clothes and we had the equipment, and I was really focused on the equipment. And then when we arrived there, the equipment.
You should mention that we arrived something like at 11 or something like that.
Yeah, close to midnight. Yeah.
And we were supposed to start filming the day after, and we had to wake up at 5.
Yeah, something like that. So I was really, as I said, really concerned with the equipment. The equipment was my thing. So equipment always with me. We get out of the train, and then I see the doors of the train closing, and then I was like, "What about my clothes?"
No, I was asking you.
You asked me exactly.
What about your red luggage? And you said, "Which one?" Your luggage.
And then we found out that the train apparently was going to Antibra or something. Next stop, Antibra, right?
It was.
It was supposed to, and then they said it wasn't. So we had to run, and I was feeling like shit, honestly. We had to run and drive. No, it was like we took a cab or something just to go to the next station as quickly as we could. Otherwise, the train would leave to Antibra. So there was one stop before Antibra. So we ended up there around 1 in the morning or something, just to get my fucking luggage. So I was feeling like a dick, honestly. And then we end up to the hotel, and then we start filming at the time that we were supposed to. But that was a good experience. I was saying that being on set, people think that this is like a mandatory kind of a situation if you want to progress, but it's not. It's the same thing of being soup versus being an artist. It depends. It might be for you, it might not be for you. I think the best thing to say or to do is to try, and then you'll see. What's the worst that can happen? It's just you don't go anymore, and that's it. You don't do it. You don't do the job anymore.
Yes, when the first time you're on set, it's
really hectic. It's a really hectic situation. Yeah, it is.
Lots of people who all seem to know what they're doing, and you arrive and you have no clue.
And people tend to think, at least I was one of those people, that everything on set is super organized and people know exactly what they're going to do on that day. It's exactly the opposite. Nobody knows what they're going to do. Well, apparently, all the ideas that we have in terms of what we're going to do in that day, we arrive on set and it turns out it's going to be a completely different thing. And it's going to be a completely different thing because someone told us in the very time that we arrived there. And then even throughout the day, it's going to change again. So adaptability, it's a keyword for everyone that would like to be on set, I would say. And again, it might not be for everyone because it's a really I find it really stressful kind of job, I'll be honest. Much more, in my view, much more than being in the studio at crunch time.
Yeah, but there's also a big difference in mentality and the relationship with people. I think the interaction with people on set is sadly still very much a macho world, quite rude, quite tough. And it's down to the history of how movies were made and who joined and what. It's like a building site, basically.
It is.
And the interaction with everyone tends to be a bit rougher. And when you're used to an office atmosphere where you're working on your computer, it's fairly quiet and people are very careful about how they interact with each other. A movie set is much different, and as you said, you have to adapt to every single thing that comes towards you and that keeps coming towards you during the day. And it's amazing that you manage to get what you want given the situation. But that said, that show was a particularly badly organized show where every single shot that we had discussed differently because they had changed their mind without telling us.
Yeah, and that can happen. You just said let's not mention the show, and we won't mention the show. No, but I was about to say that this can happen in any situation, in any show, because it's part of the nature of what we do. And you just compared that to a construction site. And I worked as an engineer as a construction site manager, so I know that kind of world. But I knew that before, right? Being on set, even though I had exactly the same perception, this is like a construction site, and you are part of that machine. Everybody's shouting with each other. Everybody changing their minds about something. Everybody that you think you should respect your work because you're about to do your part of the work. It turns out you're gonna be ran over with something else. The things that you asked to be available turns out they're not available. All of that stuff. It's really about adaptability, really. So for those of you that would like to try, give it a try, and then we'll see if it's for you or not.
But it also depends on what kind of show you're on. There's also the role of visual effects. Quite a lot of people who've been filming and who have been on set all their life. Visual effects is a fairly newcomer, and they still have the feeling they're doing the movie now. What they're producing now is the actual image, the actual sound, and we are the guys who are seen as the one behind computers who have no understanding of how a movie gets made.
Yeah. Which is totally bonkers still, especially these days, right?
It is, but it's super common to be pushed later and later in the day because no one wants to shoot a green screen, and you get 5 minutes at the very end when everybody's exhausted and they just want to go back home, and you get 5 minutes to get your green screen plate and shot to work. But that said, I've discussed with people who have been on set on a Marvel show, and it's a completely different thing because there everybody knows that 90% of the image is going to be a visual effects. Actually, someone told me they don't call a shoot anymore a shoot. They say it's a shoot viz because whatever they shoot, what's going to be kept from that is the sound, if they can. And they're going to roll to the head of every single actor because
maybe swap everything actually.
Yeah. So there they shoot, and then everybody stops, and they have an army of people, of data wranglers, who are going to get all the information they need and the crumbles and all the measurements and everything that they need to get the visual effects done properly. And there you get a very different feeling.
Experience. Yeah. Never had that experience yet. But yes, I understand that, and I want to believe that in a situation like that, because everything costs so much, and they have to be really on top of the budget. Well, they have to be on top of the budget in every single project, but we're talking about big stars that cost a lot of money per hour. So of course they have to be more on top of that thing. More recently, actually, both me and Michelangelo, that was, I think, the third guest of this show. We helped you out on a completely different project that once in a while we get into the pipeline of the company. Well, the company gets that sort of project into their pipeline, which is a theme park. You on that project had the well, I think it changed a bit. You'll talk about it maybe if you want to, but I think the idea was to use real-time rendering on that project, and because this is such now everybody talks about that. We just had like a demo that was made available for everyone to see about real-time rendering. Do you think, what was your experience first of all on that project, and what's your take on these new technologies that apparently the cinema industry wants to adapt more towards VFX, of course, but maybe not only wants to adapt? What's your take on it? Do you think it's the future, or what's the limitations, and where are the already advantages?
I think the limitations are less and less. On that show, we had to go for a game engine approach, simply because it was 9K wide, 60 frames per second. It was 19 minutes of full CG, and it was continuous shots. I think that the shots were 20,000 frames long or something like that.
Yeah, I remember that.
So it was, and also we had to be able to change the cameras after delivering the show, because we had to adjust our images to things moving on stage. So if we had to re-render the whole show, if we had used a normal renderer, it would have taken us months, and we would have eaten Cinesite spam for months. So we did a quick test, and with a game engine, and although there were quality limitations, we could render at maximum resolution in Unreal. It took us 90 seconds to render a frame. So we were not aiming for a real time, but for a fast render. That same image using Arnold would have taken 4 hours. And the difference was not 600 times less than that. So it was an obvious choice for us. But the challenge for us was integrating Unreal into our pipeline and rendering final images, and basically twisting a tool that wasn't meant to deliver these kind of images. But you must have seen the
I did.
Unreal has done on the PlayStation 5.
It's unbelievable, right?
Yeah, and you can see that the quality is not going to be a problem very soon.
Yeah,
you've all seen what the Mandalorian has managed to do, how they've shot
those LED screens.
And although there are limitations, and there are you can't film exactly as you want, and you will often have to finalize your shot in post in VFX as you normally do. I see that as a very clear future. It's already there. Actually, it's not the future, and also because of the coronavirus and the limitations we have filming at the moment. Everybody's going for, hey, why don't we shoot the way they've shot The Mandalorian? And there are many different companies trying to do.
For me, there's only one reason, which is the cost.
Yeah, the cost. A screen like that
at the moment.
Just the screen costs several millions, so that immediately narrows down the amount of which show can afford to do this. But they are finding cheaper and cheaper ways of doing this, or to making it work. And also, I guess the cost of these screens is going to be low.
Of course, it's going to be reduced. As every time that there's like a huge step forward technology-wise, of course, the price immediately goes up because it's new, right? After the years, with a couple of years, or even in some cases more than that, of course, the cost will be less and less, and it's going to be more available for everyone. And that's what happens in computers. I remember when I was buying my Pentium 3 or something, it was crazy expensive at that time. And then after a few years, it was like rubbish because there was like the new one. Available. So that will always happen, I would say. But I also think that there's definitely, as you said, it's already there. It's just a matter of how can we adapt those tools and work on the cost in order for this to be available for eventually every single production, maybe. So that means that some of the things that we're currently doing in VFX, maybe they will disappear in the same way that they will disappear with machine learning, but they will open other possibilities and other tasks for people to work on. And the human interaction and the human feel and touch and all that stuff will always be there at some point in the process. It might not be in the same way that it has been until now, but it's going to be always required, because let's not forget we are doing movies that has like an emotional response to other humans, right? So the human has to be there all the time, I think, and I don't think that will change.
No, but I'd be happy if I didn't have to roto anymore. If there is a computer,
that's exactly that's what I see, like machine learning coming up fast and effectively.
As you mentioned Thiago's work, and I find it very interesting what he's doing, but it still requires a lot of experience to manage to deliver what he's delivering, and if it wasn't
and processing power as well, because what the work that he's been doing, you have to have like a GPU that costs a lot of money.
But you know that in 5 years that won't be the case.
Exactly.
You need the experience to make it look right and to make it work, and it's going to become easier, that's for sure. But that's a task that it's not an easy one, and that's been done very, very well. When you see the FX Guide article, what he manages to get is impressive. But when I read that, I was wondering how long it took him to send back the images with the younger.
What's his name?
I forgot.
Yeah, I forgot as well. Anyway, it's there in the article. It's basically the founder of FX Guide and FX PhD. But yeah, by the way, Thiago, as I said, might be a guest of this show soon.
Seymour,
So Seymour?
Mike Seymour, yeah.
Mike Seymour, exactly. So stay tuned. I never revealed the guest beforehand because it should be about everything, not only about the guest, but about everything. But probably will be a future guest on this show as well. Maybe just one last question, because a lot of people ask me this to myself as a 2D supervisor, and maybe you had other people asking you the same thing as a VFX supervisor, which is, how do you become a VFX supervisor?
Yeah, because you get offered the position.
That's the short answer, right?
Yeah, I think it's not for everyone, but if you want to be, there's nothing stopping you from becoming a soup. My path to it is one of the paths, but people come from CG rather than comp and become CG soups and then VFX soups. Some people come from very different backgrounds and end up in that role. I think it's just you have to show that you are kind of at ease when you're dealing with the clients, that you can, as you say, adapt to a request. You have to show that you have good people skills, because that's crucial.
Because we were talking about this subject more or less in a different way with Ben, which was our last guest. But it's not that often that people have the ability of asking this to a VFX supervisor, because as we just mentioned also on the previous episode, people refrain, or they are afraid to have these conversations with upper management, whatever upper management might be. So I thought this was a good opportunity for people to know and to have that insight from a VFX supervisor like you. I think that's
you could become a VFX soup just because you've shot a short film and you needed visual effects, and you did the visual effects yourself, and then you learned how to thin plates for visual effects and what it's required, and you learned how to think about visual effects, and then you don't even need to have been a compositor in the industry for a long time. You just have to have been faced with the problems a VFX soup is facing. I think in my case, what helped is my background before doing comp and my understanding of the whole film workflow, but it's just one way of becoming a soup.
Yeah, it's more about the opportunity. I always say that good luck, because luck is also an important part, but good luck can quickly transform into bad luck, because if you're not prepared and the opportunity comes, that's not good luck. That's going to be bad luck, because the opportunity came and you're not prepared. So what it could be good luck, it turns out to be bad luck.
The luck is basically an opportunity you got, but you create that opportunity. You basically plant the seeds for what you think is something that you would like, or what you try. You plant the seeds, and then the opportunity will arrive by itself. It's not It's something you have done. Luck is just that, basically, what you have prepared for yourself.
Yeah. All right. I'm reading a question here from one of our viewers. The question is, what degree of 3D knowledge is the minimum for a VFX soup? This is a question coming from a compositing background.
You don't necessarily need to be a CG artist, but a good understanding of what is required is important, because otherwise you might just be suggesting things that are way too complicated or way too
or not feasible.
Sorry?
Or not feasible at all.
Not feasible. There are very few things that are not feasible.
Yes, you're right.
But yes, it's a question of budget, of time, and you need to understand that. But a good supervisor is, in my opinion, someone who's good at knowing who to ask. So if you don't know, or if you have any doubt, you know who to go to get an answer.
Yeah,
problem.
Exactly.
So as long as you have a basic understanding, and by being a compositor, you already know quite a lot about CG, because you know how the different passes work and what is required to render an image, and so you have a basic understanding of what you're expecting as a compositor, and then I imagine that you also start interacting with at least a lighter about the passes and the lighting of the shot. In the end, what's important as a supervisor is a good understanding of an image and how you compose an image, how it works, what doesn't work, what looks good, and
also something that I don't know if you agree with me or not, because you mentioned how an image works, but oftentimes, and you correct me if I'm wrong, oftentimes the director also doesn't know exactly what he wants to see. So sometimes he relies on the VFX supervisors of the multiple companies that this director might be working at some point in a project, to give the director options on how still sell the shot in an effective way, cost-effective way, but not forgetting the emotional response, because again, emotional response, it's what's the most important on a movie. If you don't feel anything by watching a movie, I mean, why are you watching a movie, right? So, and visual effects, of course, is the support of that vision that the director wants. But I think working or understanding an image is also, in my view, understanding the emotional response that an image gets. What's your take on that?
Well, yes, you're there to help creating an image based on a script, and you can read a single line of script in a room with the director, the DOP, and all the production designer and everybody involved. Harry Potter shoots a magic from his wand, and you ask every single person what they envision. It's going to be a very different vision
response.
For everyone. So your job there is helping them figure out how they think this should look. Sometimes just even a negative reference is a good one. Saying that's not what I want.
Exactly.
And you help them just by providing them quite a lot of different references and helping them getting a clear idea of what they want.
Yeah.
You're not there to make the decisions for them.
No, you're there to assist the vision and to make the vision be possible in the best cost-effective way. That's what they want and that's what they expect. So, coming up, actually, just to finish up, this was a question from Oscar. Coming from a compositing background that Salvador just mentioned, I think we are amongst the departments that have the more broader picture of what the shot should have, and what's, because we deal with every single department. We are at the end of the assembly line, so we know a little bit of effects. We know how the effects should look like. We know the technicalities that we are expecting to receive from an effects pass, in the same way that we also have that from a lighting situation as well, and from cameras too, because we know that if a camera is wrong, we immediately will know that the camera is wrong. So we are actually in compositing amongst the most, I would say, most prepared type of professionals in visual effects to understand all the other departments, because we deal with them all. It's not the same thing as, for example, a modeler, which is much more about the artistic part of what they do, and it's beautiful what they do, but they don't necessarily understand or care or should understand the other parts, because they're not involved in that.
So good artists should always know what happens after.
I agree with that, but they don't deal with that on a daily basis, necessarily speaking. Whereas in compositing, we have to deal with every single department, pretty much. But I agree with you. If you want to progress in your career, you should know the pipeline. Independently of where in the pipeline you're working on. I think it's time to wrap up. I don't know if anybody has any other questions. If not, I just wanted to thank Salvador once again for making this possible. I think people really enjoyed it. We'll see if we have any other final question. If not, we're just going to wrap up this. Thanks again, Salvador. Hopefully the lockdown will be lifted at some point. I don't know when, but it will. We know that it will. We know that we will. And this whole thing is gonna end, and it's gonna end for the best. I think for everyone. So thank you everyone for So Oscar, super good. Thanks, and thank you so much for your answer. That's what Oscar told you, Salvador. So everyone, thank you once again. We're going to wrap up this today. Good to see you all. And Salvador, thanks once again, and we'll be in touch. We'll be in touch soon anyway. All right, with each other. All right, bye-bye guys. See ya.